Money is not the issue. The issue is your ability to think, improvise. Every teacher should feel that his task is to have a student who is better than him. If you work 25 hours, they'll work 24 hours. But if you work 10 hours, they will work 6 hours.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Muhammad Sabi Anwar. I'm a physicist and the Dean of the Syed Babar Ali School of Science and Engineering at LUMS. Today, I am lucky to be talking to Syed Babar Ali Saab, after whom our school is named. Assalamu alaikum, Babar Saab. Babar Saab, when LUMS was founded in the 1980s, it was primarily meant to be a business school, producing business managers of the higher order with the intent to revolutionize Pakistan's business landscape. What idea transpired that led to the establishment of the Syed Babar Ali School of Science and Engineering?
Well, as you know, you are right that we started off as the whole idea was to have a business school, and that came out of my attending the advanced management program at the Harvard Business School, where I realized after I attended the program that there is much to be learnt in how people manage whatever responsibility they have in business or any other office that they will hold. Because at the Harvard Business School we had people primarily from the business world, about 70%, but the other 30% consisted of people who came primarily from the American Armed Forces, their Navy, Marines, Air Force, Land Forces, and they sent them there prior to their being given the final post in their career, command of a base or things like that. The person who became the president of our society, of our group, later on, after he completed the program, as we did, he became the head of the American Air Force Academy in Denver. So that was sort of the kind of training, not just focused on business and how to manage things. Then after I came back, a year later, I was inducted into government service to set up the Fertilizer Corporation. And there I realized, I had been managing packages for almost 20 years prior to that. And I thought I knew everything. But after I came back from Harvard, I realized there was much to be learnt in various disciplines of management. And then, of course, I was asked to be in the public sector, and there the canvas was much bigger. I was asked to set up 3 new fertilizer facilities. I was given $500 million. And the Fertilizer Corporation came out of PIDC, which was the Pakistan Industrial Development Corporation, which had been set up by government to set up industry in the public sector and then to hand it over to the private sector. This was a wonderful initiative. Well, anyway, so I realized while working in the Fertilizer Corporation that the need for a well-trained manager was even more than what I felt at Packages, because Packages, as you know, was a joint venture with the Swedish organization belonging to the Rousing family. And there we were able to send our young managers to Sweden. We were sending about 15 to 20 every year for 3 months for upgrading their knowledge as to how the Swedes were managing their industry. So this is how we developed, and then when I came out of the Fertilizer Corporation into the private sector, I felt that there was need for a business school equivalent to the Harvard, something like the Harvard Business School. So we went and set it up. We went to Harvard and sought help from their faculty to prepare the blueprint. And then, of course, we went and raised money and got government permission to set it up. So we set it up, and then, of course, we built our own campus. And the first thing that happened was 2 or 3 years after the business school had been going, people realized the quality of the graduates that came out of the business school was totally different to what we had seen coming out of other business schools in Pakistan. And so the reputation started developing in a positive way. And meanwhile, we had built up a campus which was much larger what the business school's needs were. So then there was a kind of a discussion as to how we could make the campus more populated. And the suggestion was we should start an undergraduate program with economics and computer science as the basic subjects. And that, grew as an undergraduate program. We were the first ones to introduce a 4-year undergraduate program in the country. And so we kept on adding subjects to the school of what developed into social sciences. And then about 15 years later, we thought, we had done a good job in producing good raw material for the social sciences, for the business school. But, having a background of industry where you manufactured things, where new technology, R&D was necessary, I felt that, unless you have science and engineering as a discipline at a university, we will not be able to add much to the country's development. So that was really the purpose why we then thought of this. And then I must give credit to Dr. Zahoor, who was then the Vice Chancellor. He said, before we do this, let us take a kind of do a reconnaissance of what is being done in Pakistan today by way of learning and engineering and science, and if there is any R&D. So he picked 2 very bright young PhDs, one from MIT and the other from Michigan State University, Khurram Afridi being one of them. And they spent 3 months going from Peshawar all the way to Karachi, going to various engineering universities, colleges, and they came back with the report that we were teaching yesterday science and there was no R&D. So I went there to both to Boston area and to the West Coast and met with Pakistani people who were in the academic world at Harvard, at MIT, at Boston University. And there was a number of PhDs who were working in the private sector there in the software industry. And similarly, a group existed on the West Coast around Stanford. And I asked them, I said, this is what the finding is, and we would like to do this. How do we go about it? So both the groups, independent of each other, said you should aim high in doing what we want to do, not what we are doing today. And then the next question was, how do we go about it in preparing a blueprint? So then I had met people at MIT through Salal Humair, who was a very good friend of Khurram. He said, I'll take you to meet some of the professors I had worked under. And also, he arranged for me to see the former president of MIT, Professor Chuck West. And similarly, we also had got to know Dr. Khalid Aziz from Stanford. And they said, let us have a retreat for 2 or 3 days with a fresh mind and discuss this project of yours and come up with some suggestions. And they very kindly offered to make available a facility in Boston called the Endicott House, which was gifted by Mr. Endicott to MIT as a kind of a house with full facilities. So we were there for 3 days. We had 4 professors from MIT. Khalid Aziz came from Boston, from Stanford, and of course Khurram and Salal were doing all the writing on the board to see what new ideas were. And what came out of the 3 days retreat was, it was a good idea. You've got to be ambitious, and you've got to have no boundaries, because don't create silos as we have created in our universities. You insist that the physicist and the chemist and the biologist and the mathematician are working together as a team, because there is so much to be learned from each other. So this is how. And then we asked Khurram, who had more or less taken on the task of a project manager of this School of Science and Engineering, to then work with our architect Habib Fida Ali and take him around these universities in America which had modern laboratories and working facilities. He went to, of course, Boston, MIT, to St. Louis, and to the West Coast, to Berkeley, to Stanford. And on that basis, they developed a plan for the school of, the building in which your school is now based. So there was a lot of learning and effort and investigation going on before we embarked. Before the first brick was laid on the floor, we had to be absolutely clear what we wanted to do. And so this is how the whole thing developed. And of course, then the challenge was to attract and recruit faculty and students at the same time. So that was another big challenge, to find people, because there weren't too many Pakistanis in American universities who were doing, who were on the faculty there. India had a big advantage. They had hundreds of Indian PhDs working in American universities. We had very few. But anyway, we were able to get the few that were able to come to Pakistan, and this is how the whole thing has developed.
Also, very aptly so, the school is named after your name. And in your autobiography, you also give a hint that you were alone in the management committee who were actually behind this initiative and endeavor. Was it difficult to convince colleagues?
The reason was, you see, we had a very small management committee. I mean, we had, of course, they had the Vice Chancellor was there, Zahur Hassan, and he was to step down, and the new Vice Chancellor was to come in. So the Vice Chancellor played no role in it at all. They were transitory. In the managing committee, we had people who had a good business sense, but they were always looking at, how much money you have in the pocket, whether you could do anything, whether you would run out of money. And of course, science and engineering is a money guzzler. It requires a lot of money, not only to set up the building and the facilities, also to run it, keep the laboratories fully equipped, manned, and with all the paraphernalia that is required. So they came to me and they said, this is a very laudable project, but we can't afford it. And so I was so determined on that, I said, I will not ask you for any money. I mean, not ask LUMS for any money. I was part of LUMS also. I said, all I need is a piece of land, because it has to be on the campus. You give me land, and I will raise all the money that is required for the building, for equipping it and for running it. So I then rolled up my sleeves, wrote the first check myself, and then went round all the people that knew me, that I had worked for, and it was very rewarding experience that you see, one had already established some kind of a track record of being able to deliver on what one had promised in the past. But this was something new, and I went to people who recognized that engineering and science was very important for the future of the country. So I was able to persuade them, and including the government of Punjab. They were very forthcoming, and so every penny that was raised for the school was not coming out of LUMS' own endowment or own resources.
Just a very sort of a question which might cross a thin red line is, even though you were able to convince and persuade LUMS that we should have this science and engineering school, do you think that they've accepted SSE well enough to become a part of LUMS? Because we keep on hearing about that LUMS, that SSE sucks away all the money, and is there a buy-in from the LUMS?
You see, one is that, of course, it is no doubt that SSE is a money guzzler. We have been able to raise fair amount of money for its needs or for its establishment, but for the running cost, probably they're looking at it that, I mean, I've seen both spoken word and written word from other schools that we are raising the money and SSE is spending it, but they don't realize that, you know, that the benefit that SSE can and will bring and is bringing to the nation will help the business community also. They'll discover new things, they'll invent new knowledge, they will invent new products, which the business community will benefit from it, the economists will benefit from it. So I think this jealousy will continue, but we have to live with it. It's not something we have to convince them, we have to demonstrate to them. And also with this cross-campus encouragement of students to take courses in different schools will also minimize and diminish the barriers between the schools, because social sciences will benefit from, we will have somebody who's a good economist and a good biologist at the same time. Similarly, a good Iqbal student will learn chemistry. So these are things which you as a dean of the School of Science and Engineering have to make sure that you reach out to them and say that we are not Brahmins or untouchables. We are one of you, and we want to add value to what you are teaching.
Babar, if you survey the Pakistani landscape, and you've already mentioned it a bit, we have engineering universities. These are universities primarily devoted to engineering. We have medical schools, just clinical sciences. Punjab University, Quaid-e-Azam University, they don't have engineering programs. So was this a conscious effort of having science and engineering grafted together in a union? That's what our school is.
Yeah, that's very important, because, you know, basic sciences don't change. Engineering keeps on changing. So unless you have, as you've yourself demonstrated in your curricula, that if you have students who have a solid basis, basic knowledge of physics, chemistry, biology, mathematics, then they are not scared of embarking on other issues. Just to give you an example, I ran into this girl from your School of Biology who got admitted to Harvard, and she was in Pakistan after first semester there because her father worked in PIA and she could fly back easily. So I asked her, I said, how do you find, and she was directly admitted from your school to the PhD program at Harvard. So I asked her, I said, how do you find yourself, you know, against your peers who are coming from other universities? They are much brighter and much better qualified. She said, to the contrary. You know, she said, I didn't like it when I studied it. I did calculus, which none of my other peers did. I have an edge over my peers because of the basic sciences that you taught us here. So, I mean, this is something that I think is now being recognized and rewarded by the way your graduates from the undergraduate program are getting admitted to PhD programs at the Ivy School, at the Ivy universities in America, because the first one or two that got in demonstrated to them that they were as good, if not better, than the crop they were getting from other universities for the PhD program. So they have opened the door, and now you have, I would say, 50 or 100 PhD candidates at with different universities from your School of Science and Engineering on full scholarship.
Yeah, they could be even more. In MIT, they have a center for theoretical physics, and about 5 years ago, they wanted to hire just one student, and there was a tie between two students, and both of them were our physics students. So they eventually had to decline one student who went to do a PhD in Berkeley. Now the SSC has been there for about 13 years. We had our inaugural batch in 2008. So you had certain expectations from your school and from our school. Do you think those expectations have been met, and how satisfied do you feel inside your heart that
I
we're
feel
on the
very
right
happy,
track?
but I'm one of those people who's never satisfied. I think we can do more. But one of the things that has really, sort of excited me and made me very happy is the graduate program that you have. At the graduate program, as you know, you are getting students from other universities who could not make it to your undergraduate program. You bring them on board for 2 years, and then some of them, not all, but I would say 30, 40, 50% of these, you then provide them the opportunity to go abroad for a PhD program on full scholarship. To me, this is an additional kind of service that we are providing to students who were not able to come into LUMS at the undergraduate level, but LUMS has been able to provide them a platform to go to the best universities of the world on full scholarship. That, I think, is a very, very rewarding thing. But we should do more of that.
So LUMS, as you know, started off as an MBA school. Then it focused a lot on the undergraduate program. There are other schools which do not have a graduate program. Only business school does. So I think there is also a tussle within the university about graduate versus undergraduate, liberal arts education, and a proper technical, cosmopolitan and multi-dimensional university. So how do we navigate this landscape, and where do we put our compass? Where is the average that we should be aiming for?
I think it's up to you, the deans, who have to reflect on it. I'm not academic, but I would certainly like to encourage more recruitment in the graduate programs in the other schools. For instance, the School of Education, we already have an MPhil program. The business school has also introduced some MPhil and masters and some PhD programs. So the School of Social Sciences has to catch up, and they have to. But what is happening is that many of their students, primarily from the economics department, are working with professors in different think tanks, and there they are getting that extra experience, and from there they are going for advanced this thing. But we would like these think tanks are there. They're too money-minded. We need a graduate program that is after new knowledge, not writing, reports for the government or for organizations. We need independent thinking of such things.
But creation of new knowledge, doing blue sky research, thinking, going deeper into the mysteries of the universe is something that requires more money. And the products of such a research, they're not tangible and they're not immediate. So this puts an extra financial
Yeah, but
stress
this will
on.
come. I think money is not the issue. The issue is your ability to think, improvise. I think you are gradually moving into an area and into a kind of a recognition by universities outside that you have talent here. So it's up to the faculty here to reach out to other universities to say that we can do joint research for which, the funding could come from outside and we could supplement it by local funding because you can do it much more economically here. And these are new areas that need to be explored. And so I think there is a lot of opportunity that we need to persuade our faculty. I mean, I don't have any complaints against the School of Science and Engineering because you are able to raise a fair amount of money both from internal sources like HEC and others. The government of Pakistan is spending a lot of money on R&D through Defense Department and other departments. They're spending a lot of money on consultants that come from outside under foreign aid. So there is a lot of opportunity that we are able to compete for those projects and provide the kind of knowledge and investigation and research that is required. But other schools have to, they are too comfortable in just saying, give us money, we need more money. That's not enough. They have to earn their spurs.
Babar Sahib, you've talked about holistic education, and I know that you're an avid reader of Iqbal, Sadi, and a connoisseur of the literary arts and a patron of not only literary arts but painting and calligraphy and architecture. So in this context, I would like to ask, what kind of graduate would you like to see come out of SSE? You've mentioned that you would like to see an expert on Iqbal teaching to science students, and a chemistry student should know Shakespeare. I've heard this from you from many a time. So what kind of character would you like to come out from our school?
He has to be hungry all the time for new knowledge. And one area which today I was talking to Principal H.N. College only yesterday. He, of course, didn't understand it because he's an Australian. I said, Michael, one of our basic objectives for anybody studying at H.N. College is that he's got to love this country. And he will not love the country by studying Pakistan studies and Islamiyat. He will love this country because he should study Bulle Shah, he should know Iqbal, he should study some other great thinkers that this country has produced, this soil has produced, and the music, local culture, so that there is a direct pull of the soil to this individual soul. If you just follow the O and A levels thing, and I was shocked. A friend of mine told me that he was teaching them how to speak at LUMS, and I don't know whether it was a LUMS boy or a grammar school girl. She was reading, he said, read out a Urdu couplet to me. And he said he was shocked to see that she had written out in Roman English. That to my mind is not acceptable. So this is something that we have to, unfortunately our schools are today so grade-minded that they are like a factory with 4 A's and 5 A's. They are very good at reproducing what is required in the paper, but having no knowledge at all. When they come to LUMS, 90% of what they've read, they have already forgotten.
But we need to have faculty who can relegate this inspiration.
Yeah, this is something that the faculty have themselves to accept the role that they are the makers of the future generation. They have to take this role, that they are not there just to teach and provide facilities and ability to a young generation to pass an examination. They have to mentor. They have to tutor people so that LUMS should produce the future leaders of the country, whether it is in science or in economics or in politics or in law. And it just doesn't come through only having an A grade paper, you've got to have people who can have a love for the country, who want to do well, who want to give rather than receive. Those are various characters and various kind of instincts that you have to do this. And every teacher should feel that his task is to have a student who's better than him.
So Babar Sahab, where do we get these teachers from? They are also
Well,
going to come out
you
to the society.
as a dean have to, first of all, you have to lead by example. And then you have to have that, what they call in Urdu or Punjabi, parak. You should have the nose to smell who has that instinct in him that he wants to devote the rest of his life in building up the next generation.
Babar Sahab, you've talked about Pakistan. Sometimes people say that LUMS and SSC, they are islands. They are not a part of the mainland. They are not a part of the society. There is some elitism attached with being in SSC, with being in LUMS. We have very tall boundary walls and people don't know what's happening outside LUMS. They can't speak the language. They don't know the vernacular. They don't think like a commoner. So what role can SSC play in engineering the society, in having the society think in a better fashion?
Well, I think you're already doing it in the sense that you have a number of NOP students coming in. You are already opening the doors of SSC to non-LUMS undergraduates in the graduate and the PhD programs. So you are, and then you run programs when you have foreign faculty like Asad Abdi and others coming in, Khurram Afridi, where you bring in faculty from other universities to share with them the opportunity that you are providing to your own faculty to learn from these visiting faculty. So we should continue to do more of that. And I hope before long you will have a number of your programs on the virtual programs which we will be able to share with the rest of Pakistan freely so that they can log in and get a lecture on any particular subject that you have delivered, and that they are able to take benefit of that without spending any money on it. So I think these are things which you need to do. But Sabi, what is your biggest challenge is to keep your faculty motivated, and that is by example. If you work 25 hours, they'll work 24 hours. But if you work 10 hours, they will work 6 hours. So this is the age, you are still young, and it's a wonderful opportunity that you have of setting a new standard and a new goal of devotion, also of continually learning. I mean, you are yourself a very innovative person, but you have not switched off to learn new things, new ideas. And I think once a year you have to go out, spend a month go to China, go to Japan, countries. Everybody is very keen to go west. I think there's a lot happening in China, and Chinese today are producing more research papers than any other country in the world. So go and find out how we can link up with Chinese universities, bring Chinese scholars here. With this new CPAC and other things, we have a special relationship with China. I think when the Vice Chancellor comes and as soon as travel is open, we should invite VCs from 15 or 20 Chinese universities to come and spend a week at LUMS. They should see what we are doing, and then they will only appreciate. Unfortunately, the attitude of the Pakistanis, I've seen it from very close quarters with the foreign countries, is we've always got our hand like this, and nobody has any respect for you when you have a begging bowl in your hand all the time. Here you should say that here we have an opportunity, that we are doing new things with the Chinese may be of some advantage to the Chinese. In the area of health, in the area of other things, we can do it much more innovatively than the Chinese can. And they don't have any hang-ups that all the knowledge, they have the monopoly of knowledge. They are very keen to learn from others. So I think this is a good opportunity.
For many years, Babar Sahab, there has been an iron curtain between our scientific academia and our industry. Over the past decade or so, I've seen this curtain melt a little bit. As an industrialist, can you say anything about how an industrialist perceives our science departments? And
yeah, they have no concept of what you do. And I would put the blame on the
us.
universities. It is impossible to get a faculty member to come to a factory. You have to drag him. He doesn't have time. So they must know that, and also the students, they should bring their students to see to how the theory that is being taught to them in the classroom is being applied to them on the factory floor. And so you have to be more proactive in this and persuade. You tell them that, okay, 1 day a week, you have to get out. And I will open any door of any industry you want in Pakistan that your people want to go and see, whether it's a chemical industry, a gas industry, a mechanical industry, textile industry, paper industry, any industry, because, on your managing committee, you have people who are very well connected. So we can open the door and they can go and see for themselves how the theory is being converted, maybe 20 years old theory is being practiced. So you can come up with new ideas, new theories. I mean, if you have 70 professors, 50 of them should have a direct relationship with 50 different industries. And this is one way of their not only getting knowledge, but also getting financial resources and support.
Right. So, Babar Sahab, are you a proponent of having one SSC in the country which is really world class?
That is why we spent the last many minutes talking about it, that our doors are open. We want to share everything that we have. But, I've had a lot of pressure on me. Why did you set up a LUMS in Karachi or a LUMS in Islamabad or a LUMS in Multan? I mean, we can't do that. We don't have that resources of people is more important, and we don't have enough people. So, I remember when President Ayub went to China, he asked President Mao, what is your number one problem? He said, I don't have enough people. That means people who can do things. So we need good people with motivation, with passion, with the fire in their belly, that they want to conquer the world through education, through producing people who are better than us.
So you would like to see other institutions taking cue from us,
Absolutely,
taking ideas
absolutely.
from us, and making their own SSCs.
Yeah, and I mentioned to you the other day that I know the new project in charge of GIK Institute. And I would, as soon as things normalize, you take a group of your faculty to GIK and to see what linkages we can have with GIK, because they have civil engineering we don't have. Can we have a joint degree of civil engineering and chemical engineering or things like that? So that way GIK can come up and maybe we can also benefit from that. So we should do the same with NUST. If I know GIK is forthcoming, but NUST you have to go and try yourself. But any other university that has the feeling, the ability, and the capacity to have a relationship with you, we should do that.
So traditionally in Pakistan, the stalwarts of scientific progress and engineering have been the defense sector. So do you think there is an opportunity that needs to be explored?
Well, I mean, it's a big, there's a big wall glass wall, steel wall, stone wall around defense thinking. The best thing is to invite them over. Come and see what we are doing. Is there anything of interest to you? Can we help you? Can we be of any service? Don't say help, service. Because we are keen that we should have the best technology in this world for defending this country, to protect Pakistan.
I'm sure SSE consumes a lot of your attention, and you talk about SSE with myself and with my colleagues and with a lot of people. So I'm sure your family knows about SSE as well. What do they think about the SSE? And
well, you know, I've skipped a generation there because my granddaughters, who both went to MIT, they appreciate science and engineering and all that. So I'm getting them involved in it. Mubarak, you have already invited her to be on your advisory board along with other people. I think this is one way of sort of getting them hooked up. Zara, who's my other granddaughter, she also went to MIT. She got her master's from MIT. And she is, I think, on the advisory board of your National Incubation Center, which is based there. So these, hopefully they will continue, and they'll come up with new ideas, and they will continue to support School of Science and Engineering, and also LUMS on a larger scale with whatever I'm leaving behind in my foundation.
Babar Sahab, in all of these years, what do you think are Pakistan's biggest and grandest challenges which the School of Science and Engineering can help address and mitigate to an extent?
It's not just technology, Sabi. I think our biggest failure has been in not inculcating in our generations that followed the Qaid on being truthful. You know, all your other skills, all your other abilities are negated if you have no ethics. So that is why I keep on talking to you and to your faculty that truthfulness, being honest to yourself, is very important. It solves a lot of problems. It unburdens so many issues on people's minds, and it produces a very good person who practices it. And we need that.
And I think that comes by example. You cannot preach.
Well, you can preach. You can. I mean, I can tell you, when I was at school, Persian was compulsory, and we were taught. Apart from the fundamentals of Persian grammar and simple sentences, we were straight taken on to Sadi's Gulistan. I know my professor, the teacher who was telling us about, he said, you don't like, perhaps this is a burden, you think it's useless. One day in life it's going to make a difference to you. And of all the things that I learned at Hitchison, Sadi comes to me more than anything else. And this is something that we need to inculcate in our generation. And this is something I was trying to tell the principal at Hitchison College, who's an Australian. He thought I was talking Greek when I said, you know, people should know Persian and Urdu. And he said, we are teaching them, they take examination, they pass. I said, that's not enough. They must appreciate it, they must enjoy it. So my plea to you and to your colleagues is 5 minutes of every lecture you spend on things which are not related to the subject you are teaching, and how important it is for a person to be truthful, to be honest, to be helpful, to be generous, not to be jealous, to work as a team. In life you will not find anybody who, you know, scores all the goals by himself or takes all the wickets by himself. You have to have a good bowler, a good batsman, a good fielder, a good wicketkeeper. In cricket, in hockey, you need to have good forwards, good backs, good goalkeeper. It's a teamwork, and this is something that you have to inculcate. And these grades are destroying that teamwork because they're jealous too. They want to kill their next neighbor by having more marks than them.
Wow. Also, when you talk about this teamwork, we had this breeze of fresh air. If you look at the back flap of your autobiography, there is a couplet there. Kamale hamnashin dar man asar karad, wagarna man haman khakam ke hastam. I'm sure in your life you've come across these hamnashins which have influenced and inspired your life. Could you tell us a little bit about some of them?
Sure. I mean, this, I was thinking, not thinking, but I was being asked by people, you narrate things which we don't find in books or things, because in my journey through life, I've been very fortunate to have met people, to have traveled a lot, to have sat in the company of thinkers, philosophers, statesmen, politicians. They said, why don't you write something? And, I was mulling over this for some time. But one thought came to my mind that if I ever wrote anything, the title of the book would be What is to Learn, Learning from Others. I didn't have to ask anybody what should I call this book. I said, this is what it is going to be. And this particular rubai of Saadi, this couplet describes what one is, that it's the influence of the people that you interacted with. And I must say, I owe a great deal to my mother. She was very keen to meet my friends because she said, you'll be influenced by your friends. And though she was in Parda, and most of my friends were non-Muslims, she would receive them in the zanana of the house, treat them there like her own sons, and just to gauge what kind of people they were. And then she would tell me, you can go to that home, you can't go to that home. And I think that was, as a result of this, that, you are influenced by the people that you associate with. And this started with me from the age of 8 or 10.
Any teachers from Sacred Heart or
Aitchison College, Sacred Heart, they were nuns. I was there only for 2 years. But at Aitchison, the teachers that taught me, I kept in touch with them till they passed away or they went across the border to India.
And they were all inspiring and...
Yes, because they were not selected on the basis of their academic ability. They were selected as to how they could mentor students, watch them, guide them, reprimand them.
Wow.
And I treated them like a father. And they treated me like a son. I was very lucky. And even with foreign teachers, Mr. Barry, who was the principal, I lost contact with him after I left Aitchison and he left Lahore. He went as inspector of schools to Manchester, and then he was working in the education department in the UK. But when I was thinking of setting up the school of teachers training program at Ali Institute of Education, I wrote to him and I found him. I went to meet with him after about a lapse of 40 years. And I wrote to him, I said, I want your guidance as to how I should set up the School of Education. And he brought with him his successor. He said, I'm out of date. I brought a young man who will tell you. And every time I talked to Mr. Barry, I used to say, sir, to him. And he turned around to his companion. He said, he's 75 years old and he's still sirring me because I was his teacher. This is how I was brought up. Then the other very kind and very supportive and very instructive teacher of mine was Victor Kiernan, who was a card-carrying communist, but a tremendous, very one of the great historians of England. And I kept in touch with him after I left Edson College till he passed away about 10 years ago. I used to visit him in Scotland and visit him. So to me, a teacher is like you don't abandon your parents, you don't abandon your teachers.
Babar sir, most of the faculty at SSE, including myself, have done their PhDs from Western universities, from England, Europe, or the North America. Do you know of institutions inside the region, India, Iran, Pakistan, or close by, from which we can seek inspiration, which particularly inspire you, and some institutions that we can take as role models?
No, I don't know. I mean, at one time, Government College Lahore was a center of learning. They had giants as teachers there.
Have you interacted with Iranians?
No, not directly. But post, I've had the opportunity to meet Professor Hussain Nasr, who's now settled in America, and he was the founder of Sharif University.
Right.
And his son is a very good friend of mine, Wali Nasr, who was the dean of the Johns Hopkins Institute in Washington, D.C. But no, not Iran.
I think you talk about China, but there's another opportunity, a treasure trove on our western
Iran.
borders.
Yeah, we should go. We should go and seek out. There's a mine of new knowledge, of old knowledge and new knowledge there. You know, the Iranians are not behind anybody else in technology today. You know, the way they fired their rockets in Iraq, and the Americans were absolutely astounded to see the accuracy of those rockets. So, but with Firdausi and Hafiz and Saadi, there is another gold mine of this thing. And of course, I don't know what the Turks claim him, but Iranians could claim him, the Afghans could claim him. This is Rumi. Here is another ocean of knowledge to be explored and to learn from.
Also, my last question is not about SSC, it's about Pakistan. And you've seen Pakistan being born. We are here in the 21st century. Have you seen our society in general decline?
Yes, totally. Because those values have disappeared, which we were talking about earlier. We have run away from truth. Everybody wants something for nothing.
What made people truthful 60 years, 70 years ago?
I think they were better educated. The parents had a big influence on their children's upbringing. They wanted children to be a source of pride to the family through conduct, not through earning money. That he would not do anything which will bring shame to the family. Today, if a young man goes and steals money and makes $1 million, everybody claps for him. So those are the values that have disappeared. The parents have lost their responsibility, abdicated, especially mothers.
So what role do mothers have to play?
Well, mothers are very important. You know, I mean, every child is nearer to the mother than the father because she carried him for 9 months. So if he is true to his blood, he would respect, love, learn from the mother. The mother also has to take that responsibility that don't worry about his grades, make sure that he has good manners. He doesn't tell lies.
I know that you're particularly excited when you see and talk to women in SSE.
Sure.
Is that something that you would like us to
Yeah,
focus
I think
more?
they are, you know, as the Chinese say, half the sky is held up by the women of this world. They are a very important element in our society, in our thing. They have been denied their due role. We must give them the opportunity, and our women are second to none.
So one last question I would like to ask in Urdu. 20-30 साल के बाद, 30-40 साल के बाद, आप कैसे देखते हैं कि सैयद बाबर अली स्कूल ऑफ साइंस एंड इंजीनियरिंग ने मुल्क के लिए, इस इलाके के लिए और इंसानियत के लिए क्या काम किया हो?
काम तो वो ये होगा कि अच्छे आप बंदे और बंदियाँ वहाँ प्रोड्यूस करें जो कि जाके मुल्क में इल्म की आग लगा दें, तरक्की की आग लगा दें.
बाबर साहब बहुत शुक्रिया. थैंक्स अ लॉट.
No, it's wonderful talking to you, and I hope I will have more opportunity to talk to people from your school.
बिल्कुल बाबर साहब.
Good luck. Thank you.
Are there things you tell the trustees or you tell the faculty, look, this is what I've learned, it's all up here, it's in my book, but there is more, can someone listen to me?
Well, this exercise that we are having is a part of that exercise.
Your dreams and your fears for the LUMS of today as you look forward.
Well, one always feel that the next generation is much worse than yours.